It was the kind of morning Wales does when it's trying to apologize for something. The clouds weren't heavy. They were just there, that particular shade of gray that sits between a threat and a promise, low enough that you feel them on your skin before you see rain. The mountains in the distance had gone soft at the edges, like someone had pressed a thumb into a watercolor painting before it dried. Rosamund Perry had been standing on that pavement since 6:30. Her mum thought she was sleeping in. She wasn't sleeping in. She hadn't slept at all, really not the kind of sleep that counts. She'd lain on her side staring at the thin strip of streetlight coming under her curtain and listening to her little brother snore through the wall, and around 4 in the morning she'd just decided. Got up. Pulled on the yellow coat, the one her nana bought her at the Llandudno market 2 summers ago, the one with the wooden toggles that didn't quite match, and walked the 20 minutes to the barriers in the dark. She was 13 years old. The first hour, there were only 7 of them. 7 people, spread across a 30-meter stretch of metal barriers, everyone in their own private world of flasks and phones. A man in his 60s with a Union Jack umbrella already hooked over the barrier even though it wasn't raining. A woman with 2 young children who were asleep in a pram, the clever ones. An older couple who didn't seem to be talking to each other but kept exchanging sandwiches in a way that was its own kind of conversation. Rosamund stood near the end of the line, close to the lamppost, because she thought she'd be more central but, then, lost her nerve and drifted. She was holding a card she'd made herself. Not printed. Made biro on cardstock, with the edges she'd tried to trim straight but hadn't quite, and a small drawing she'd done in the corner because she thought it might look nice, but now, in the gray morning light, the drawing looked less like a daffodil and more like something had gone wrong with a star. She thought about putting it in her coat pocket. She didn't put it in her coat pocket. By 9 o'clock the street had become something else entirely. There is a specific kind of noise that only happens when Welsh people are genuinely excited, not the polite, murmured appreciation you get at certain events, not the performance of enthusiasm, but the real thing, which sounds like several conversations happening at once with nobody listening to anyone because everyone has something urgent to say. It builds from the ground up. It starts in the feet somehow. Rosamund felt it before she heard it. A shift in the air. The man with the Union Jack umbrella straightened up. The sleeping children in the pram woke and didn't cry, which felt like an event in itself. Phones appeared. A council worker in a yellow vest came past and smiled at nothing in particular, which is what council workers do when they know something you don't. The woman next to Rosamund, she'd arrived around 8, a stout woman in a purple fleece with a Welsh dragon badge on the lapel, the kind of woman who immediately offers everyone in the vicinity a biscuit, which she had leaned over and said, in Welsh first and then English when Rosamund's face went politely blank, "Won't be long now, carried." Rosamund nodded. Her hands had gone cold around the card. She hadn't thought much about what she was going to say, which was the honest truth of it. She'd thought about whether Kate would come to her section of the barrier. You couldn't guarantee that, everyone knew that, the walkabout route was a thing that happened organically and you just had to stand in the right place and hope the variables fell your way. She'd thought about whether she'd be able to speak at all, which was a legitimate concern because Rosamund Perry was not, generally speaking, a person who spoke first. She'd been called shy so many times it had started to feel like a character description. Not a flaw, not really, more like a coat she'd been handed so young she'd forgotten it wasn't hers. At school, she sat near the back. Not the back, where the kids who wanted to be noticed sat. The second to back, which is where the kids who'd made peace with being invisible sat. She handed in her work. She got decent marks. Nobody was ever unkind to her, which sounds like the description of a fine life and mostly is, except for the particular loneliness of being someone nobody thinks to be unkind to because they've genuinely forgotten you're there. Her mum said she had an old soul. Her nana said she was deep water. Rosamund said nothing, usually. Rosamund looked out windows. The motorcade sound. It's not what films prepare you for. Films give you roaring engines, impressive convoy, the whole cinematic declaration. What actually happens is more subtle, a shift in the quality of the silence first, and then, a low presence, like weather changing, and then, you realize the street has reorganized itself without anyone giving instruction. People pressed forward. Roswin was suddenly less at the edge than she'd intended to be. The crowd had its own physics, its own gentle insistence, and, when she looked to her left, the man with the Union Jack umbrella was already waving it, though there was nothing to wave at yet, and the two children in the pram were now standing up in it, which the pram was not designed for. "Here," said the woman in the purple fleece, and she put her hand on Roswin's shoulder very briefly, and it was the right thing to do at the right moment. The cars slowed. The crowd became a single sound. And, then, the door. Roswin had seen photographs. Of course she'd seen photographs. Everyone had seen photographs. But photographs do a specific and reliable dishonesty with certain people, which is that they flatten a quality that is fundamentally three-dimensional, and what Roswin was entirely unprepared for was the way Princess Catherine of Wales moved through a crowd, not through it, exactly, but with it, toward it, as if the natural direction of her body in any space was toward the person who needed her to look at them. She was wearing a coat the color of the Welsh sky on its better days, not the apologetic gray of that morning, but the particular blue you get when the cloud breaks and the light comes through over Snowdonia, that brief and specific blue that makes you understand exactly why people have written poems about this country for 1,000 years. She was laughing at something. Genuinely. Not the public laugh, which Roswin had been watching in videos long enough to know by now, not the gracious, performed warmth, but the real thing, which crinkled the eyes, which didn't care about cameras, which belonged to whatever the man 3 barriers down had just said to her that Roswin would never know. She moved left. Away from Roswin's section. Roswin looked at her card. The probably not a daffodil. She thought, it's fine. It's absolutely fine. Some people get it, some people don't. That's the whole deal. That's what you sign up for when you turn up at 6:30 in a yellow coat. She started to fold the card very slightly at one corner, just to do something with her hands. The purple fleece woman was waving with extraordinary commitment. The 2 pram children were eating something they'd found. Roswin looked at the mountains. She didn't hear footsteps. She heard a change in the crowd sound near her, a kind of collective intake, a reorientation, the way a room changes when someone walks in who doesn't know they change rooms. And then, the person beside her stepped back slightly, organically, and there was suddenly less barrier between Roswin and the world, and she turned her head. Princess Kate was 2 meters away and moving toward her. Not toward the section. Toward her. Roswin's brain went entirely offline. The yellow coat woman from the morning, the council worker had called to someone, something about a barrier on the far end, and there'd been a small redirect in the route, and Kate had turned, and the way the crowd had arranged itself had deposited Roswin, specifically the 13-year-old with the wonky card and the inaccurate daffodil, directly in her path. The variables had landed. "Oh, I love your coat," Princess Kate said. And Roswin Perry said nothing, because she had been swallowed whole by the distance between thought and voice, but she held up the card, which she had to commit to in this moment or never, and her hands were shaking, which the princess definitely noticed, because the princess looked at the card and then at Roswin, and her expression did something that wasn't in any of the photographs. It went quiet. Not the public quiet. The real kind. The kind someone has when they've seen something that matters to them and decided to stay with it. To be continued in Part 2. The card read, in careful biro, "To Her Royal Highness, thank you for coming back to Wales. My Nana always said this country gets into people. I think it got into you. From Roswin, age 13. That was it. No request. No ask for a photo. No please sign this," which Roswin now realized might have been the more useful card to make. Princess Kate read it. She read the whole thing, which took longer than you'd think because Roswin's handwriting was small and she'd crowded the words to make them fit. The princess held the card the way you hold something you want to be careful with, 2 hands, tilted slightly toward her, and her eyes moved across it once and then, again. The crowd around them had not stopped existing. The noise hadn't stopped. The waving hadn't stopped. But there was a perimeter, somehow, the thing that happens when 2 people are genuinely looking at each other, which creates its own temporary wall against the rest of the world. Roswin was aware of her own heartbeat in a way that felt diagnostic. "Roswin," the princess said. The name came out properly Roswin, which Roswin had given up expecting from most people outside Gwinnett. Most people said it like it rhymed with something unfortunate, and the fact of it being said right landed in Roswin's chest in a specific place she didn't have a name for. "That's a Welsh name," the princess said. It wasn't a question. It was recognition. "Yes," said Roswin, and that was the first word she'd managed, and it came out fine. Just fine. Not shaking. A whole word. Princess Kate was looking at her properly. Not the sweep and move, not the polished engagement at velocity you see in the crowd footage. She had stopped. Her security was not stopping, they had the careful, practiced patience of people paid to wait without looking like they're waiting, but she had stopped. "Your Nana," she said. "She told you that?" "She grew up here. In Blaina. She used to say the mountains don't let go of people." Roswin paused. Her mouth had apparently decided to keep going without consulting her brain, which had not authorized this sentence. "I thought that was just something she said to explain why she never moved away. But she gave me this coat, and she said yellow because Wales doesn't do yellow enough." The princess looked at the coat. Something moved across her face. Roswin saw it and couldn't name it, not in that moment. She'd name it later, at home, lying on her side staring at the same strip of streetlight, going over the whole morning in the specific obsessive way humans replay things that matter. She'd name it later as recognition. Not sentiment. Not performed empathy. The look of a person who has heard something true and knows it. Princess Kate leaned forward, very slightly, and she said, "Tell your Nana she was right about both." 5 words. 6 words. Something between 5 and 6 depending on how you count contractions. Roswin blinked. "The mountains," the princess said. "And the yellow." And she smiled, the real one, the eyes included one, the one that wasn't arranged for anything, and she touched Roswin's hand on top of the barrier. Not a handshake. Not the formal contact of official greeting. Just a touch, brief and whole, the kind of contact that says "I am here, I see you, this was real." Then, her attention moved, because it had to. Because there were 80 more people at this barrier and a route to complete and a schedule with the fixed and immovable gravity of all royal schedules. Her hand lifted. Her body turned. But, before she moved more than half a step, she looked back. "Are you from here, Roswin?" "From Blaina?" "Just outside," Roswin said. "Dal with Elan." The princess nodded. "Beautiful," she said, and it wasn't the politician's beautiful, the word dropped on a place you'd been briefed about, it was the beautiful of someone who had stood in a specific valley and felt it. She moved on. Roswin stood at the barrier. The purple fleece woman was saying something to her. The man with the Union Jack umbrella was taking a video of something further down the street. The Pram children had both sat back down, possibly exhausted by the preceding hour of their lives. The card was gone. Kate had kept it, held it against her side, carried it away with her into the rest of the morning. Roswin's hands were still shaking slightly. She looked at where the princess had been standing, which was now just pavement. The woman in purple touched her arm. "You all right, Carried?" she said. Roswin started. Then, stopped. Because the thing about moments like this is that they resist the compression of retelling, and she knew even then, even at 13, that any version she offered would be smaller than the real thing. "She kept the card," she said finally. The woman nodded like this was the sufficient summary of events that it was. Down the street, at the far end of the barriers, a child was crying because their flag had blown away. A man in a waterproof jacket was holding his phone too high and getting footage of the sky. 2 teenage girls were doing the thing where you record the screen of someone else who was recording it. Wales doing its usual multitasking. The motorcade left at 11:10. Roswin watched it go with everyone else, that same collective thing again, everyone leaning slightly in the direction of departure, everyone's face doing the particular expression of something ending that you weren't ready to end. Then, it was over and the morning became a normal morning again, which felt offensive, frankly. The clouds were still doing their ambiguous thing. The mountains were still there, doing what mountains do, which is exist at a scale that makes everything else seem temporary. Rosewind started walking home. She passed the bakery on the main road where she usually bought a sausage roll on Saturdays when she had money, and she didn't go in, because it felt wrong to just have a sausage roll immediately after that. Like eating breakfast after a wedding. She walked past the community center with the sign in the window she'd read 100 times, Welsh language class Thursday 6 p.m. all welcome, which she'd always meant to go to and never had, and, for the first time she thought she might actually go. She walked the 20 minutes home. Her mom was in the kitchen in her dressing gown, which meant she checked Rosewind's room and found the empty bed, which meant there was going to be a conversation. "You were there," her mom said. "Not a question." "She kept my card," Rosewind said. Her mom looked at her for a long time. "Your Nana's going to lose her mind," she said. They called her Nana at 11:30. Her Nana picked up on the second ring, which she always does, like she'd been sitting beside the phone, which she probably had been, because she'd known Rosewind when Rosewind had told her the night before, conspiratorially, the two of them on the phone while Rosewind's mom was watching something in the other room. Rosewind told her the whole thing. The yellow coat. The reading of the card. The name said right. The tell your Nana she was right about both. The touching of the hand. Her Nana was quiet on the line for a moment. "Both," she said. "Both," Rosewind confirmed. "The mountains and the yellow." Her Nana made a sound that was not quite crying and not quite laughing and was completely specific to the Welsh older woman who has just had something she's held true her whole life confirmed by a source she didn't expect. "Well," her Nana said, after a moment. "Yeah," said Rosewind. "She's one of us," her Nana said. "She really is." And Rosewind thought about that, about what it means to belong to a place, whether belonging is something you're born into or something you earn, something you choose or something that chooses you. She thought about the mountains that don't let go. She thought about a woman in a Welsh sky blue coat reading a wonky biro card with both hands and the care you give to something fragile. She thought about 5 words. She was right about both. There is a specific problem with moments that matter, which is that they refuse to stay where you put them. Rosewind didn't post about it that day. She'd thought she might. She'd carried her phone the whole morning specifically so she could, had the vague half-plan of every 13-year-old who documents things, take the photo, write the caption, collect the proof that a thing happened. But, in the moment she'd had neither the presence of mind nor, if she was being honest, the desire to reduce it to a screen. Her hands were on the card. Her eyes were on a face that was looking back at her with complete and specific attention. Her phone had stayed in her pocket. She didn't post that day or the next. Then, it had been 3 days, and it felt too late to post, and then, she stopped thinking about posting at all, which felt like the right conclusion. She told 3 people, her mom, her Nana, and her best friend Bethan, who lived 4 streets away and was constitutionally incapable of keeping secrets but had been sworn to silence with the particular gravity that only close friendship can generate. Bethan kept the secret for 11 days, which was, for Bethan, a personal record. The Thursday after the visit, Rosewind went to the Welsh language class. The one in the community center, the sign she'd read 100 times. She went at 5:45, which meant she was the first person there except for the man who ran it, Gareth, 50s, the kind of man who wears a fleece unironically and makes very good tea, and she sat down and he handed her a worksheet with the alphabet on it and said, "Dayon for coming," which even she knew meant well done. There were 8 people in the class that first week. An English woman who'd moved to the area for her partner's job and wanted, she said, to meet the place properly. A man in his 20s who'd grown up Welsh speaking, lost it, and wanted it back. He said that last part in a way that implied more than it stated, and Rosewind recognized the tone. 2 older women who sat together and already knew quite a lot and were there mostly to stay sharp. A teenage boy who'd been sent by his grandmother and looked like he knew it. They said SUT may and stumbled through it and someone mispronounced land 4 times in a row and Gareth was patient about it in a way that felt practiced from long experience. Rosewind found that she already knew more than she'd thought. Not formal Welsh, she'd never been taught formal Welsh, hadn't gone to a Welsh medium school, her mum's Welsh was limited and her dad's was non-existent, but absorbed Welsh. The kind you get from a grandmother who code switches without noticing. The kind that's in place names and family expressions and the specific words that exist in Welsh for things that have no clean English equivalent. Hiraeth, she knew. Cynefin, she knew the sense of belonging to a specific landscape. She wrote them down in her worksheet margins. Her Nana came to visit at the end of that month. She came on the train from Llandudno, which she always did, with a bag that contained too much food and the specific Welsh grandmother items, a jar of something homemade, a magazine Roswyn would never read, and a £20 note folded into a very small square that she pressed into Roswyn's hand like it was classified information. They sat in the kitchen. Roswyn's mum made tea. Her Nana made the tea better and nobody said anything about this. And then, her Nana, unprompted, reached into her bag and took out a photograph. It was old. Roswyn had never seen it. Her Nana, younger, not young, but younger, maybe 40, the hair dark where it was now white, standing at the base of a hillside somewhere unmistakably Welsh, wearing a yellow coat. Not the same coat. But yellow. Roswyn looked at it for a long time. I forgot you had a yellow coat, her mum said. I've always had a yellow coat, her Nana said, like this should have been obvious, like this was a known and documented fact of her personhood. She took the photograph back and looked at it herself. She was right about both, she said, quietly, mostly to herself. Weeks later, Roswyn was doing her English homework, an essay about a significant personal experience, which her teacher had assigned with the confidence of someone who believed all 13-year-olds had accessible and appropriately significant personal experiences ready to hand, and she sat for a long time with the blank document open. She thought about writing the obvious story. The barriers. The morning. The 5 words. She opened a new document instead. She wrote about her Nana's yellow coat in the photograph. She wrote about Cynefin and what it means to belong to a landscape you didn't choose. She wrote about how belonging isn't always comfortable or warm, sometimes it's the mountain, which is cold and indifferent and holds you anyway. She wrote about how a stranger once confirmed something her Nana had told her, and how confirmation from a stranger isn't worth more than a grandmother's word, but sometimes you need the echo to understand you weren't just hearing yourself. She handed it in. Her teacher wrote at the bottom, in red pen, Roswyn, this is really something. Where did this voice come from? Roswyn read the comment twice. She thought, the same place it always was. You just weren't looking. She didn't become a different person after that morning. That would be the easier story to tell, the neater arc, girl meets princess, girl finds confidence, girl transforms. But that's not how it worked, and Roswyn would have rolled her eyes at that version even then, at 13, with the particular ruthlessness 13-year-olds apply to narrative convenience. She still sat second to back. She still handed work in on time. She still looked out windows. But something small had shifted, the way a piece of furniture moves 2 inches and changes the whole feeling of a room, nothing you can point to, exactly, but you sense it every time you walk in. She went back to Welsh class the next Thursday. And the Thursday after that. In November, the class did a small showcase, not a performance, exactly, just a gathering where each student said something in Welsh, whatever they'd learned, whatever felt real. Gareth put out chairs and made the very good tea and invited a few family members, and it was exactly as low stakes and genuine as that sounds. When it was Roswyn's turn, she stood up and she said, in Welsh, stumbling slightly, but present, but meaning it, my name is Roswyn. My Nana grew up here. She said the mountains don't let go. I am finding out she was right. The English woman from the class clapped hardest. Her Nana, who had come down on the train specifically for this and brought far too much food again, pressed her £20 note folded small into Roswyn's hand afterward and said nothing, because she was Welsh and sometimes the most important things don't need saying. Somewhere in a file or a box or the ordinary administration of a royal household, there is a biro card with uneven edges and a drawing that might be a daffodil. Roswyn doesn't know where it is. She's made her peace with not knowing. Because the card was always just the vehicle, the envelope, not the letter. The letter was the look on a face that had stopped and stayed. The letter was a name said correctly, in a crowd, by someone who didn't have to bother. The letter was 5 words that crossed a barrier and traveled 20 minutes and went down the phone line to Landudno and landed in her nana's chest in the place where true things land. She was right about both. That's what stays. That's what the mountains do. They don't give you back what you bring them. They give you back something heavier, something that takes longer to carry, something that turns out, eventually, to be worth the wait. Roswin Perry stands in the second to back row. She is not invisible. She was never invisible. She is deep water. Her nana always said so.